Film photography is ridiculously expensive. So, the last thing you want to do is start out with a camera that's not going to give you the results you want right out of the box. Today, we're going to talk about some cameras that are going to give you the right results that you want and also not break the bank for you. So, to start out, the first camera that I ever used as a film photographer was the Canon 7. And this is actually a really great camera, but it is not the best first camera for new film photographers for a number of reasons. Number one, it was pretty expensive to buy. It was about $200. But number two, there's some pretty major problems with it that I didn't learn until after I developed my first roll of film. There's haze in the lens, and also the shutter wasn't working properly. And after some costly repairs and a couple rolls of film that were completely ruined, I was almost ready to give up on the process. So I'm going to try to help you avoid some of those same pitfalls. Now, the great news is that some of the best cameras that you can buy as a first time film photographer are also some of the most technologically advanced. But the most surprising thing about these cameras are that they're also some of the cheapest cameras on the market. And there are so many available that you shouldn't really be worried about the prices going up anytime soon. So here's my recommendation. You want to pick up a camera from the late 90s to the early 2000s that's in a DSLR style type body from one of the major brands. I personally recommend the Nikon N60, but there are several different types of bodies and there are literally thousands of them on eBay running for about 20 to 40 bucks per body. This N60 was a $20 camera body and I saw thousands on eBay in addition to the one that I wound up purchasing secondhand. The great thing about this camera is that it has all of the things that I mentioned previously in terms of auto exposure, light metering, automatic film loading, and of course, because it's a DSLR, it is really flexible in terms of lens choice. This camera body takes the Nikon F mount, and there are literally thousands of lenses on the secondhand market that are extremely cheap and extremely good quality that you can get for this camera so that you can get a bunch of different looks. And like I said earlier, it has all the different program modes that you need for a beginning film camera. So the program mode is really good at getting a perfectly even exposure. And then you can also do aperture priority and shutter priority, as well as do some different light metering techniques to get the exact exposure and image and make all the creative choices that you want in body. And the best part about this camera is that you can't help but take great images with it. Even in program mode, the images are completely fantastic. And if you have the right film stock, you're going to be blown away by the images that you get out of these cameras. Now, in full transparency, there are some downsides to this specific camera and some of these DSLRs. I think the biggest one is that, of course, these do not have the vintage film aesthetic that a lot of us are looking for. And to be honest, that's a fair part of why we get into film photography. It's because of the look and the process. These look very much like the DSLRs that we're used to from the 2010s. In fact, Nikon took its DSLR inspired design from the SLRs of the late 90s and early 2000s. And so it's easy to imagine this camera being mistaken for a D7000 or any one of Nikon's other advanced DSLR camera bodies. The second thing is that some of these have their own quirks. Like, for example, this Nikon N60 doesn't do so well when the battery starts running out of juice. In fact, I went on a family vacation recently and all of my film shots had missed focus by just an inch because the battery was draining. It wasn't fully dead, but the battery was drained enough to where the camera wasn't catching focus perfectly. But Nikon is just one brand, and the N60 is just one type of camera from that era. There are several different bodies, such as the N70, the F series. There's a lot of different options to choose from. And it's not just Nikon. Canon has the Rebel series, Olympus has really great film cameras. There are a lot of options for you to choose from, and they're all pretty interchangeable with their own quirks, but they all do the same basic job of giving you those features that you need as a beginning film photographer to make sure that you get great images. When we talk about the first camera you should have as a film photographer, there are three things that we should look for. Number one, it really needs to automate some of those things that are kind of unique to film photography. Did you know that when you're loading your film, if you do it correctly and you do everything right, but you miss one tiny step, your roll might not take and you might get your roll back from the lab with none of your shots exposed? Ask me how I know. Purely mechanical cameras sometimes rely on understanding a lot of the nuances just to get the film on right. So, a good beginner camera is going to help you a lot with winding your film. Another thing that can go wrong, especially with rangefinder cameras like my Canon 7, is shooting an entire roll of film with the lens cap on. Now, some cameras like rangefinders, which a lot of film cameras are, show you an image through a viewfinder prism, but you're not actually seeing what's coming through the lens like you would an SLR. And so as a result, sometimes you can go half or an entire roll of film with all of your images not receiving any light. Ask me how I know. So it's for that reason that I strongly suggest some sort of single lens reflex camera, something that allows you to see what exactly your camera lens is actually seeing. This is going to help out with composition and focus, and also it's going to make sure that you avoid some of those mistakes. And then the last thing is metering. Light metering is such an important part of film photography, especially coming from digital where we meter a little bit different. Metering is basically how you make sure that you get a perfect exposure every single time. Now, once you've been doing it for a while, you'll probably want to get a third-party light meter or an iPhone app or something of that nature. But as a beginner, you really want your camera to take care of a lot of that for you. So you're going to want to pick up a camera that has a lot of those features already built into the camera for you. So the second thing we're looking for is, in addition to being easy for beginners to use, you're going to want a camera that is going to grow with you. So there are a lot of really great beginner film cameras on the market that were targeted for just casual shooters. And as you get more experience, you will want to play around with those and use some of them for yourself because they have kind of a cool aesthetic. But for your first camera, you want something that's going to be able to grow with you in terms of exposure modes and also lens choices. Shooting wide and shooting telephoto, for some reason, are completely different than they are shooting digital. It's a hard thing to explain, but it just feels a little bit different. And you should be able to experience that through your first camera. So make sure you're picking up a camera that will give you changeable lenses, but also will help you with exposure modes. You want a camera that has a really good program mode, but you're also going to want a camera that will allow you to do things like aperture priority exposure or shutter priority exposure.